My 3.5-year-old son and my wife's childhood sweetheart son were fighting over a toy. My wife, Chloe, slapped our son across his small face. Leo, you need to learn to share. Why would you try to take a toy from your big brother? Leo burst into tears, terrified. Meanwhile, the other boy, Tyler, looked on with a smug grin. He even clapped his hands. I walked in from work and saw the whole thing. 1. Crying. That's all you ever do. Just you wait until I'm done with you. Chloe was still fuming. She raised her hand to slap him again. I rushed forward, pulling my son behind me. They're just two kids fighting over a toy. Why would you hit Leo? When Leo saw me, he grabbed on my pant leg for dear life. He was sobbing so hard he could barely breathe. Chloe's face was a thundercloud. Well, look at you, Liam. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? Seeing her arrogant expression, I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. Why can't I talk to you like that? You hit our son without even asking what happened, and I'm not allowed to say anything. I met her glare without flinching. My voice rose despite myself. Her face twisted in fury. Let's get something straight, Liam. I don't need you telling me how to discipline my own son. I knelt and pulled Leo into a tight hug. I rubbed his back, trying to soothe him. Leo's crying slowly subsided into shuddering gasps. Daddy, Tyler took all my toys, he choked out. He broke them all. That's when I noticed the floor around Tyler's feet was littered with the broken remains of toys. They were all of Leo's favorites. When Chloe heard Leo's accusation, she scoffed. Are you serious? It's just a few cheap plastic toys. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? I looked at her cold, indifferent face. A bitter feeling settled in my stomach. I was done arguing with her. I picked Leo up and carried him to his bedroom. Seeing me walk away, a flicker of malice crossed Chloe's face. She scooped up Julian Vance's son, her voice softening. Come on, Tyler. Auntie Chloe will take you to buy some new toys. You can play with them however you want. The little boy snuggled into her arms, then shot a nasty, triumphant look toward Leo in the bedroom. Leo, who had just stopped crying, immediately burst into tears again. After they left, Leo wiped his eyes and looked up at me with his small, innocent face. Daddy, does Mommy not love me? Looking at his tear-streaked cheeks, my heart broke. It doesn't matter if Mommy loves you or not. Daddy will always love you. Daddy, I'll always love you too. Leo seemed exhausted and quickly fell into a deep sleep. 2. He frowned in his sleep, still troubled even in his dreams. I gently tucked the blanket around him. He mumbled, Daddy. In his sleep, I didn't think much of it and just patted his back lightly. He frowned again and called out, Daddy. His small voice sounded strained, uncomfortable. My stomach dropped. I placed my hand on his forehead. It was burning up. Oh no, Leo's got a fever. It was already past 10 o'clock. A heavy rain was pouring outside. Chloe still wasn't home. I called her phone repeatedly, but every call went to voicemail. She finally picked up on the 8th try. Her voice was sharp with irritation. Liam, what is your problem? Can't you take a hint when I don't answer? I was frantic with worry. I didn't have time to argue about her tone. Chloe, are you serious right now? I said, my voice rising. Leo has a high fever. He's burning up. You need to come home right now so we can take him to the hospital. A cynical laugh came through the phone. He was perfectly fine this afternoon, and now you're telling me he's sick? Do you really expect me to believe that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My eyes turned red with a mixture of rage and anxiety. I shouted into the phone, Chloe, this is serious. Why would I joke about Leo being sick? You need to get back here now. It's pouring rain, and it's not safe for me to drive him to the ER alone. In the background, I could hear Tyler's giggling. Then Chloe's voice, completely unconcerned. You're just trying to guilt me into coming home. Stop playing these stupid games. Liam, using our son's health as an excuse. What kind of man are you? You've been acting out ever since Julian came back. Can you please stop being so childish? I'm sick of your jealousy. I hope this is the last time you pull a stunt like this. And let me tell you, Liam, even if Leo is sick, I'm not coming home tonight. With that, she hung up. I stood there, feeling like I'd been plunged into ice water. Then a sudden, chilling calm washed over me. I quickly bundled Leo up, carried him to the car, and drove to the hospital. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring my vision. I drove carefully, my hands gripping the wheel. Leo was clearly in distress, crying and fussing in his car seat. I didn't dare take my eyes off the road to comfort him. We finally made it to the ER. As I was at the pharmacy window picking up Leo's prescription, I saw Chloe rush in, frantically carrying Tyler. Her childhood sweetheart, Julian, followed closely behind her. She was shouting at the nurses and doctors. Her eyes, fixed on Tyler in her arms, were filled with anguish. But after a doctor examined him, it turned out to be nothing. Tyler just had a tiny scratch on his finger from a broken toy. It had barely even bled. And yet, Chloe was acting like it was a life-or-death situation. Watching the scene unfold, I felt a wave of surreal absurdity wash over me. The old me would have marched right over there with Leo in my arms and confronted her. But in that moment, I found I just didn't care anymore. They put a small bandage on Tyler's finger, and they were gone. It was almost dawn by the time Leo and I got home. Unsurprisingly, Chloe hadn't come home. The apartment was empty and silent. I gently laid my sleeping son in his bed and pulled the covers over him. I opened my phone and saw a new notification on my social media feed. Out of habit, I opened it and saw a new post from Julian. It was a photo of Chloe, Julian, and his son, all cuddled together on a large bed. The caption read, "A family full of love." In that instant, my heart turned to stone. 3. My wife, Chloe Morgan, daughter of the prominent Morgan family of New York City. She was the queen of our campus back in college. I pursued her for 3 years at NYU. I did everything I could to win her over, humbling myself completely. I wrote her endless letters until my hand cramped. I brought her breakfast every single morning. Whenever she studied at the library, I would go ahead to save her a good seat. For every holiday, I'd painstakingly pick out the perfect gift. Even when she was in a bad mood and took it out on me, I would just soothe her with a gentle voice. But despite all that, she never agreed to be my girlfriend. It was only when we were about to graduate, right after her childhood sweetheart Julian Vance moved to Europe and got married, that Chloe finally came around. A year after graduation, we got married. Then we had Leo. For the first few years of our marriage, she was a decent enough wife and mother. But that all changed 3 months ago when Julian got divorced and moved back to the States. Chloe became a different person. She grew increasingly critical of me, and her patience with Leo wore thin. Yet, she was endlessly gentle and attentive to Julian's son, showering him with affection. Chloe completely ignored me and Leo. Several times, she left Leo home alone while I was at work. She was too busy whining and dining with Julian and his son, playing house with them. Anyone would have thought they were the real family. I argued with her about it countless times. I tried to get her to focus on our own family. But she didn't just ignore me, she got worse. Until last night, when she didn't even bother to come home at all. I stared at Julian's Facebook post and quietly hit the like button. Then I left a comment. Quite the happy family. Hope it lasts forever. Around noon, I made some chicken noodle soup. After Leo had some, his condition clearly improved. He looked at me with hopeful eyes. "Daddy, can I watch a movie?" I settled him on my lap. "Of course, buddy. What do you want to watch?" In his little kid voice, he said, "I want to watch Spider-Verse." I put on a movie and cut up half a watermelon. We sat there completely absorbed. 4. Just then, the front door opened. It was Chloe, and she wasn't alone. Julian and his son were with her. The moment she walked in, she stormed over to me, her face a mask of fury. "Liam, what the hell was that comment supposed to mean? How could you say something like that?" Her eyes were wide with anger and disbelief, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. Leo saw her and instinctively burrowed into my arms. I answered coldly, "What do you think it means? The 3 of you are sleeping in the same bed, and you have the nerve to ask me that." Julian stepped in. "Liam, is this really necessary? Chloe and I have known each other our whole lives. If anything was going to happen between us, it would have happened long before you were in the picture." My eyes hardened as I stared at Julian. "This is a conversation between my wife and me. Stay out of it." Chloe's face darkened, and she gritted her teeth. "Liam, Julian is just trying to talk to you. What is with this attitude?" Looking at her defending him, a fresh wave of disappointment washed over me. "Talk to me. He's in my home, in my face, meddling in my marriage, and you call that talking?" "Chloe, ever since Julian came back, you two have been attached at the hip. Have you for one second thought about how Leo and I feel?" Chloe's voice lost some of its force, and she avoided my eyes. Julian and I grew up together. He's divorced now and has no one. What's wrong with me helping him out a little? Julian looked at me with contempt. Chloe, if your husband is this petty, I don't see him amounting to much. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Whether I amount to anything has nothing to do with you. With that, I took a step forward, closing the distance between us until I could feel his breath. My gaze was like a laser, pinning him in place. But you, an outsider, repeatedly trying to drive a wedge between my wife and me. What exactly is your game? Julian, holding his son, leaned back slightly. The smirk on his face grew more pronounced. What's the matter? Did I hit a nerve? You only married Chloe in the first place because you were after the Morgan family's money, weren't you? Chloe stood to the side, her eyes darting between me and Julian. She bit her lip, looking like she wanted to say something. In the end, she turned on me. Liam, that's enough. There's a limit to this jealousy. I snorted. Enough? So you carrying on with your childhood sweetheart is somehow my fault. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tyler started crying, and Chloe immediately rushed to comfort him. Meanwhile, Leo was trembling in my arms, too scared to even look up. Chloe could never have imagined this. The Olmi would have done anything for her. If she said east, I'd never dare go west. She couldn't believe I was embarrassing her like this, right in front of Julian. Her chest heaved with fury. All right, Liam, I have had it with you. If you keep up this nonsense, we're getting a divorce, she shrieked. At this point, I was completely done with Chloe. All her energy was focused on Julian and his son. She didn't have a single thought for me or Leo. Was there any point in continuing a marriage like this? A few months ago, the word divorce would have shattered me. But now I felt strangely calm. Fine, let's get a divorce. My voice was low but unshakably firm. I've had enough of this sham of a marriage anyway. The only people in your heart are your childhood sweetheart and his son. To you, Leo and I are less than strangers. Chloe seemed stunned that I had agreed so easily. Her face flushed, then went pale. After a moment, she must have decided I was bluffing, calling her bluff with a strategy of my own. She turned to Julian, her voice softening. Julian, why don't you and Tyler just move in here? Neither of you knows how to take care of yourselves. I'll feel better if you're here with me. A flash of triumph crossed Julian's face, though he feigned reluctance. Are you sure? I wouldn't want Liam to get the wrong idea. He shot me a smug look as he said it. Chloe lifted her chin arrogantly. This apartment is my prenuptial property. It has nothing to do with him. I'll have whoever I want stay here. Only then did Julian nod. All right then. Besides, Tyler can't stand to be away from you. Right, buddy? Tyler, now back in Chloe's arms, immediately nodded. Yeah, I want to be with Mommy Chloe every day. I want her to make me yummy food. Chloe tweaked Tyler's nose gently. Of course, sweetheart. I'll make you something delicious in just a little bit. Hearing this, my son, Leo, buried his face deeper into my chest, his small body shaking with silent sobs. My shirt was already soaked with his tears. Watching their picture-perfect family scene made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't stand to be there another second. I picked Leo up and started for the door. Chloe's brow furrowed. Liam, where are you going? She yelled. My voice was ice. To make room for your new family. And starting today, let's get the divorce process started. I took a deep breath and continued. I'm taking Leo. He's the only thing that matters to me from this marriage. As for assets, we'll split everything according to the law. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. All you'll have to do is sign. I turned and walked away. Liam, Chloe's voice called out from behind me, trembling slightly. If you walk out that door, you will live to regret it. I didn't answer her. Holding Leo tight, I slammed the door shut behind me with a resounding crash. 6. The moment I opened the door, a blast of cold winter air hit me. Somehow, it felt warmer than the atmosphere inside that apartment. Leo lifted his head from my shoulder. His little face was stained with tears, but his eyes held a fear and helplessness far beyond his years. Daddy, where are we going? He asked in a small, stuffy voice. I stroked his head and said one word, home. As I drove, Leo hesitated before asking timidly, Daddy, are you and Mommy really getting a divorce? I nodded. If Chloe had been good to Leo, maybe I wouldn't have made this decision so quickly. But now, for both my sake and Leo's, this marriage was over. I noticed Leo didn't look sad, but almost relieved. I couldn't help but ask, Leo, if mommy and daddy get divorced, who would you want to live with? Without a moment's hesitation, he blurted out, with you, daddy, of course. I smiled and ruffled his hair. Then his face fell again. Mommy only loves Tyler. She doesn't love me at all. Mommy gives all the good things to Tyler. And if I say anything, mommy hits me. Looking at my 3-year-old son, his innocent face clouded with sadness, felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I fought back the burning in my eyes and made him a promise. Leo, from now on, daddy will never let anyone bully you again. Leo nodded, his expression serious. About half an hour later, I pulled up to a sprawling estate in Greenwich. This was the house I grew up in. My mother passed away from an illness 4 years ago. I hadn't been back since, partly because I was too busy with work, and partly because I was afraid of the painful memories. I am a son of Arthur Cross, the wealthiest man in New York City. My father believed in a philosophy: spoil the daughter, discipline the son. Before college, my monthly allowance never exceeded $100. From elementary school on, he sent me to boarding schools and paid me little attention. It wasn't until college that my allowance was raised to $500 a month. Throughout my entire education, I lived on a tight budget. As a result, my relationship with my father was incredibly strained. When I was 15, he brought home his mistress and his 10-year-old illegitimate son. My mother, enraged, divorced him and moved to Europe. But she would come back to the States for a while every year to be with me, until she died in a foreign country 4 years ago. My resentment towards my father reached its peak. Our relationship froze over completely. 4 years ago, I was angry with my mother for not coming to my wedding. It was only later that I found out she was already bedridden. My father didn't come either. He had wanted to arrange a strategic marriage for me. I refused. I didn't invite him, and he showed no intention of coming. I knew he had always looked down on me, and he probably looked down on the Morgan family even more. 7. As Leo got out of the car, he gasped at the sight of the enormous mansion. Wow, this house is huge. I picked him up and stroked his head. Leo, this is where Grandma and I used to live. From now on, this is our home. Leo let out a cheer. Really, Daddy? I gently pinched his nose. Of course it's real. Daddy never lies to you. Leo threw his arms around my neck and planted a kiss on my cheek. Yay, Daddy. I pushed open the heavy front door. An elderly woman was watering plants in the foyer. I called out softly, Elena. Elena was the only housekeeper in the mansion. Years ago, my father had a staff of more than a dozen here. But my mother preferred a quiet life. She let everyone go except Elena. Elena had been the one to take care of us my whole life. Hearing my voice, her body stiffened. When she turned and saw me, her eyes immediately welled up. Her voice trembled. Young Master Liam. You're back. She put down her watering can and wiped her hands nervously on her apron. It really is you. Oh, thank goodness. A happy flush spread across her cheeks. It's been 4 years, sir. She covered her mouth as tears finally spilled over and ran down her face. My own eyes grew misty. Elena, I'm home, I said, trying to comfort her. And I'm not leaving. We're here to stay. She kept wiping at her tears, her voice choked with emotion. Good, good. It's so good to have you home. I'll go get your old room ready. I set Leo down. Leo, say hello to Mrs. Elena, I prompted, holding his small hand. Leo blinked his big eyes, looking at Elena with curiosity. In his sweet, childish voice, he said, Hi, Mrs. Elena. That was all it took. The tears Elena had just managed to stop began to flow again. Hello, little master, she said with a watery smile. What a polite young man. This is the first time I've ever seen him. I led Leo inside the house. He was bursting with excitement. He ran up and down the grand staircase, exploring every corner. Watching him so full of joy, a warmth spread through my chest. Elena followed behind me. She chattered on about funny stories from my childhood, her eyes constantly drifting to Leo, filled with affection. Master Liam, after you and your mother left, it was just me here. The house was so cold and empty. But now that you're back with the little master, it finally feels alive again. Just then, Leo came running down the stairs. He was holding an old toy, shouting excitedly, Daddy, look what I found. It was a gift my mother had bought for me for my birthday when I was a child. I couldn't believe it was still here, perfectly preserved after all these years. I took the toy from him, and memories came flooding back. Those happy days with my mother felt like only yesterday. But now, she had been gone for 4 years. A week later, just after I woke up, Elena knocked on my door to tell me that my father was waiting for me in the study. After I washed up and got dressed, I walked out of my room and overheard Leo talking with Arthur Cross. "You must be Leo." "Yeah." "How did you know? Who are you?" "I'm her daddy's daddy." "Can you guess who that makes me?" "You my grandpa?" "No, that's not right. I don't have a grandpa." My father's tone turned slightly sharp. "Did your father tell you that you don't have a grandpa?" "Uh-huh." "Well, Grandpa was very busy with work and couldn't come home for a long time. That's why you didn't have a grandpa. But now Grandpa is home. So now you have a grandpa." Leo asked curiously. "Are you really my grandpa?" "Of course I am." I walked into the study and saw my father sitting at the large mahogany desk. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked much older. His hair was peppered with gray, but his eyes were as sharp as ever, holding the keen edge of a man who had dominated the world of business for decades. Standing behind him was a man in a crisp suit with a buzz cut. He had a plain, unremarkable face, the kind of man you wouldn't look at twice in a crowd. But anyone who truly knew my father understood how dangerous this man was. His name was Cole, Arthur Cross's #1 bodyguard. His combat skills were legendary. Over a decade ago, my father was ambushed in the Midwest by a dozen armed men. Cole single-handedly took them all down. It made him a legend. I gave Cole a slight nod, a silent greeting. I turned to my son. "Leo, why don't you go find Elena? You can skip preschool today and just have fun at home." Leo cheered and scurried out of the room. I stared at my father, who had aged so much, and spoke coldly. "What are you doing here?" He took a sip of tea before answering. "I heard you're having trouble with that Morgan girl. Getting a divorce. What's it to you?" A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "I warned you from the beginning. The Morgans are bad news, but you wouldn't listen. In 2 weeks, Morgan Industries is set to sign a $500 million contract with a foreign company. Their business has been struggling lately. If they land this deal, they won't just recover. They'll take a significant step forward. If they don't, given their current situation, they won't last much longer. That Julian Vance fellow isn't actually divorced. He came back at this specific time to get close to Chloe, earn her trust, steal their trade secrets, and snatch the deal out from under them." I listened in silence, processing what he said before speaking. "You used to barely give me the time of day. The only reason you're being so patient and telling me all this now is to get back in my good graces. Arthur, if your illegitimate son hadn't died, you probably would have gone your whole life without ever thinking of me again. For years, that son, Lance, had been the one showered with all the family's affection. He was the biggest degenerate in New York City. Gambling, drugs, you name it. He owned countless cars and properties. A month ago, he died of a drug overdose. The tabloids had a field day with it. As soon as the words left my mouth, a vein pulsed on my father's forehead. It was a sign of his extreme anger. I braced myself for an explosion, but instead he just let out a deep, heavy sigh. Maybe it was my imagination, but in that single moment, he seemed to age 10 years. "Liam, I'm getting old. I know you've held a lot of resentment towards me over the years, but the Cross Empire ultimately needs a Cross to run it. It's time for you to come back to the company." I looked at his slightly stooped shoulders. A complicated feeling stirred within me, but the years of accumulated anger made it impossible for me to simply give in. "Come back to Cross Industries. You think it's that easy for me to just forget the past? My mother died alone in a foreign country without a single family member by her side. Where were you then?" I sneered, my words dripping with sarcasm. He slowly stood up, a pleading look in his eyes. "I know I failed both of you. I will spend the rest of my life making up for what I owe you. If you won't do it for yourself, at least think of Leo." At the mention of Leo, I fell silent. Right now, I was the general manager of a successful tech company, but I could only provide Leo with an upper-middle-class life. Compared to the vast commercial empire of Cross Industries, it was nothing. Besides, if I didn't take over, the family fortune would eventually fall into the hands of that mistress. The thought calmed me down. I spoke slowly. "Give me 1 more year. I just made general manager. I need more time to polish my skills. This year would also give me a chance to figure out just how deep the waters at Cross Industries really were. If I dove in headfirst now, I could easily drown. My father didn't object, but it was clear his mood had improved considerably. We had reached a preliminary understanding. He didn't say much more. He didn't leave right away, either. Instead, he stayed and played with Leo. He didn't leave until Leo finally called him Grandpa. He left with a smile on his face, but he left Cole behind. During this time, I had the divorce papers sent to Chloe. After several heated phone calls, she still refused to sign. She screamed at me that if I insisted on a divorce, I would regret it. I couldn't understand it. She was the one who betrayed our marriage, so why was she clinging to it so desperately? Regardless, I had already handed the matter over to my lawyers. One day, after work, Cole and I went to pick Leo up from his preschool. We were told that his mother had already picked him up. A cold dread washed over me. I pulled out my phone and saw 2 unread messages. The first was from a friend of mine, a distant relative of the Morgan family who I was on good terms with. Liam, it's the old man Morgan's 60th birthday gala tonight. How come you're not here? I froze. Even though Chloe and I were in the middle of a divorce, I was still officially their son-in-law. Her father's 60th birthday, and I hadn't heard a single word about it. The second message was from Chloe. Liam, if you hadn't been so pathetic and desperate for me in college, Julian never would have left the country and gotten married in the first place. You were nothing but my little simp. Whether we get divorced or not is up to me. You want a divorce so badly? Well, I'm not going to give you what you want. You care so much about your precious son, don't you? Let's see how much you can stand to see him suffer. Attached was a video. I clicked play. My vision narrowed, my eyes locked on the screen. It was filmed on Chloe's phone. She slapped Leo hard across his small, innocent face. I told you to eat your dinner properly. This suit for Uncle Julian was custom-made for over $20,000, and you deliberately spilled soup all over it. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. Leo was crying hysterically. I didn't mean to. Mommy, please don't hit me. Talking back to me? Get on your knees. Get on your knees and apologize to Uncle Julian right now. Leo's eyes were wide with terror, his whole body shaking. Under Chloe's force, Leo was pushed to the floor and forced to bow his head again and again. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Julian sat there, a smug look on his face. His son, Tyler, stood beside him, clapping and cheering. My eyes were bloodshot. The muscles in my face twitched with uncontrollable rage. Even the usually stoic Cole had a dark, murderous look in his eyes. I opened to find my app for Leo's smartwatch. It showed his location, the Astoria Grand Hotel. I forwarded the video to my father, along with a single text message. Arthur, if you're not at the Astoria Grand in 30 minutes, don't expect me at your funeral. Cole and I raced to the hotel. We made it in 15 minutes. We entered the grand ballroom. I immediately saw Chloe, Julian, and Tyler sitting together at a table, laughing and talking. A perfect, happy family. Meanwhile, my son Leo was on the floor, forced to eat scraps of food with his hands. My mother-in-law saw me and sneered. Well, Liam, what kind of son-in-law are you? Showing up this late. You have absolutely no class. My face was a stone mask as I strode towards the main table, ignoring her. Seeing me ignore her was a public slight. She gritted her teeth. Liam, are you deaf? I guess it's true what they say. You can't buy good breeding. When Chloe and I got married, almost no one from my side of the family attended. Because of that, my mother-in-law had always looked down on me. She never thought I was good enough for Chloe. She couldn't resist taking a jab at me whenever she had the chance. Old man Morgan frowned. Liam, you have a nerve to be fighting with Chloe over a divorce. This is my 60th birthday party. Who invited you? Did I say you could come? My mother-in-law's eyes lit up, and she let out a scornful laugh. So that's it. The loser shows up late because he wasn't even invited. Do you have any shame at all? Chloe's brother, Kyle, chimed in venomously. Liam, since you weren't invited, stop embarrassing us and get the hell out. The Morgans had never respected me. They always thought I was beneath them. The Vance family was at least on their level financially. Now that Julian was back, they were eager to put on a show for him. They were practically tripping over themselves to grind me into the dust. Julian watched the Morgans tear into me with a triumphant smirk. He wrapped his arm around Chloe, his eyes challenging me. I didn't say a word. I walked straight up to Julian, and I slapped him across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the entire ballroom. It was a powerful blow. Julian's head snapped to the side, and a bright red handprint immediately blossomed on his cheek. He clutched his face, his eyes wide with disbelief. He never imagined I would dare to touch him in front of everyone. His head was ringing. It happened in a flash. No one could have predicted that Liam Connor, the meek, accommodating son-in-law, would do something so outrageous in public. The entire ballroom fell silent. Chloe was the first to react. She shot to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. "Liam, are you insane? How dare you? You get down on your knees and apologize to Julian right now." I laughed coldly. Apologize? Apologize for what? I swung my hand and slapped her across the face. "You too, trash. You dare to make my son kneel. Who the hell gave you the nerve?" The force of the slap sent Chloe stumbling backward. She fell to the floor in a heap. Her hair was a mess, her perfect makeup ruined by tears and rage. How could he? For the first time, I felt like a complete stranger to her. A collective gasp went through the crowd of guests. Some covered their mouths in shock, unable to believe what was happening. The Morgan family was livid, jumping to their feet and screaming accusations at me. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Chloe's brother, Kyle, his eyes filled with hate, grabbed a wine bottle and charged at me. But old man Morgan grabbed his arm and held him back. "Liam, I didn't want to get involved in your business with Chloe, but causing a scene like this at my party. You've made things very difficult." I sneered. "Difficult? If it's so difficult, then let's just end the whole damn thing." Then, as the entire room watched in stunned disbelief, I grabbed the edge of the head table and flipped it over. Plates, glasses, and silverware crashed to the floor. Food and wine flew everywhere. The Morgans seated at the table were drenched in soups, wine, and gravy. Every single one of them. They were an absolute mess. My condescending mother-in-law got the worst of it. A tureen of expensive, scalding hot lobster bisque poured directly over her head. She let out a blood-curdling scream and began writhing on the floor. Audacious, absolutely, unbelievably audacious. The other guests were speechless. The Morgan family was a major player in the city. When they were first starting out, they were known for their ruthless, anything-goes methods. Even the criminal underworld gave them a wide berth. And now, their son-in-law was trashing the patriarch's own birthday party. It was like spitting in the face of a lion. Old man Morgan's eyes were bulging with fury. He looked like he wanted to eat me alive. "He's lost his mind. Get him! Somebody kill this bastard!" Kyle, who had been waiting for the signal, charged at me again, swinging the wine bottle. Behind me, the plain-faced Cole moved. He shot out a foot, catching Kyle square in the stomach. Kyle grunted as he flew backward, crashing into a neighboring table and sending it splintering. He was out cold. I looked at my son and said softly, "Leo, close your eyes." He obediently covered his eyes with his small hands. With no more reservations, I grabbed the utterly bewildered Julian and started beating him mercilessly. "You want to be shameless? Fine, I'll help you." My fists landed again and again. In moments, his face was swollen like a pumpkin. Tyler tugged at my pants, crying and screaming. "Stop hitting my daddy. Stop hitting my daddy." Chloe scrambled towards me like a wild animal, trying to pull me off, but I backhanded her away. She collapsed on the floor. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth as she glared at me with pure hatred. "Liam, you're crazy. Have you thought about how this is going to end?" Hotel security guards rushed over and surrounded us. But any guard who got close to me was taken down by Cole with a single, efficient move. Not one of them got back up. Everyone was stunned. Was this guy even human? The remaining guards exchanged nervous glances, not daring to advance. Old man Morgan furiously smashed an expensive bottle of wine on the floor, his eyes blazing. "All of you get him. I want this animal crippled." At the patriarch's command, the rest of the Morgan clan grabbed bottles and chairs and rushed forward. But they had severely underestimated Cole. He moved through them like a ghost. In no time, a large number of them were on the floor, groaning. The ballroom was a war zone, with half the guests writhing in pain on the ground. I was tired. I picked up Leo and held him close, whispering words of comfort. Chloe stared at the carnage, her face as white as a sheet. For the first time, a flicker of regret appeared in her eyes. The patriarch calmly pulled out his phone his eyes still locked on me. You just wait, Liam. If I don't destroy you today, my name isn't Morgan. My mother-in-law had managed to get to her feet and was pointing at me, shrieking curses. Liam, you bastard. You've ruined the Morgan family. I hope you die a horrible death. She screamed, trying to lunge at me to scratch my face, but she tripped over one of the bodies on the floor and went down again in a pathetic heap. Who has the nerve to talk about destroying my son? Who wants my son to die a horrible death? Step forward and say it to my face. A powerful voice boomed from the entrance. Every head in the room snapped toward the doorway. A collective shockwave went through the crowd. It was the city's wealthiest man, Arthur Cross. Arthur strode in, leading the charge. Behind him were more than 30 people. It wasn't a huge group, but they carried the presence of an army. Their aura was overwhelming. These were the top executives of Cross Industries and the heads of its global subsidiaries. Each one of them was a titan of industry, a person whose actions could shake the city's entire business landscape. Arthur Cross wasn't just the richest man in New York. He was the second richest man in the country. He was a regular fixture on the news. Everyone in that room recognized his face. Arthur had been in the middle of a board meeting when he got my text. He had rushed over immediately with his top people. He had made it with 1 minute to spare. His piercing gaze swept the room, finally settling on Old Man Morgan and me. The color drained from the Morgan patriarch's face. His legs began to tremble uncontrollably. My mother-in-law was frozen on the floor, her mouth hanging open, unable to utter another word. Everyone was stunned. What? No way. Liam is Arthur Cross's son? This? Chloe was completely dumbfounded. That's impossible. What is happening? Old Man Morgan's expression was a twisted mess. His company was already in decline. 70% of their business came directly from contracts with Cross Industries. And now, they had thoroughly, completely offended Arthur Cross. The patriarch finally realized the sky was falling. He was consumed by a regret so deep it felt like it was eating him alive. Arthur walked over to my son, knelt, and smiled gently. Come here, Leo. Let Grandpa hold you. Leo looked up at me for permission. I nodded. Only then did Leo's face crumple as he choked out, Grandpa. Arthur picked Leo up and turned his cold gaze on the Morgan patriarch. Did you really think your family runs this city? You're nothing but a bunch of thugs who clawed their way up using dirty tricks, feeding on the scraps from my table. If my son hadn't taken an interest in your daughter, do you really think Cross Industries would have ever given you the time of day? Don't make me laugh. You're nothing. The Morgan family stood there, shell-shocked by the verbal lashing. The patriarch's face was as black as soot. But facing Arthur Cross, he didn't dare say a word. After tearing into the Morgans, Arthur turned his attention to Julian. And you know better. The Vance family's overseas business is on the verge of bankruptcy. To save yourselves, you decided to go after the Morgans' $500 million deal. Your family sent you here to get close to Chloe, to steal their proposal and their bottom line. If I'm not mistaken, your family is about to close that deal for yourselves, aren't you? The signing ceremony the Morgans had planned in 2 days was never going to happen. You've already bought your plane ticket back to Europe, haven't you? The moment Arthur finished, Julian, who had been playing dead on the floor, shot up. His voice trembled. You're lying. That's not true. Every eye in the room was now fixed on him. Julian looked around wildly, completely losing his composure. He scooped up his son and made a run for it, but he was immediately tackled and held down by members of the Morgan family. Seeing this, no one had any doubt left. This was a stab in the back of the highest order. Stealing a man's livelihood is like murdering his parents. 13. Chloe completely lost her mind. She threw herself on top of Julian, scratching and hitting him. You bastard. I'll kill you. The Morgan patriarch's eyes were blazing. He turned to Julian and roared, You backstabbing snake. You dare to plot against my family. Julian's face was covered in bloody scratches from Chloe's nails as he struggled. At this point, he knew there was no use denying it. He started laughing maniacally. So what if I did? You Morgans are so high and mighty all the time. This is just you getting what you deserve. Arthur Cross watched the chaotic scene with a cold smile. He continued, and since we're laying all the cards on the table, I might as well tell you that I have acquired substantial evidence of the Vance family's illegal business operations overseas. All I have to do is hand this evidence over to the authorities, and the Vance family can look forward to being completely wiped out. Hearing this, Julian looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He went limp, collapsing to the floor, his eyes filled with absolute despair. I knew Julian Vance was finished. The Morgan family had plenty of their own skeletons in the closet. The patriarch would never let him go easily. As much as I disliked my father, I had to admit his move, using one enemy to destroy another, was viciously effective. The Morgan patriarch knew he could settle his score with the Vances later. Right now, his priority was to appease Arthur Cross. Otherwise, the Morgan family was truly done for. At this thought, beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed. He began to stammer, his voice laced with terror and desperation. Mr. Cross, I was blind. I didn't know Liam was your son. Please, I'm begging you, have mercy on my family this one time. Arthur snorted, his eyes full of contempt. Mercy? You know exactly what kind of life my son has lived under your roof all these years. Today, I'm going to show you the price for bullying a son of Arthur Cross. He turned to the executives behind him and declared in a booming voice, as of today, all contracts and partnerships with Morgan Industries are hereby terminated. The patriarch looked as if he'd been hit by a freight train. His face turned a deathly gray. 70% of his company's revenue depended on Cross Industries. Terminating the contracts, on top of losing the $500 million deal, was a death sentence. Arthur Cross was known for his ruthless decisiveness in the business world. Once he made a decision, it was final. In his desperation, Old Man Morgan turned to me. My dear son-in-law, I was wrong. I'm so sorry for how we treated you, for all the pain we caused you over the years. I'm begging you, please ask Cross Industries to spare us. Begging me now. Where was this attitude before? I just stared at him, my face an impassive mask. The patriarch then turned to his daughter. Chloe, go talk to Liam. He loves you so much, he'll listen to you. Chloe finally snapped out of her stupor. She scrambled over to me, her eyes pleading. Liam, he tricked me. I swear, I know I was wrong. Let's not get a divorce. I promise I'll be a good wife to you from now on. I shove her away. She collapsed onto the floor. I looked down at her, my voice laced with venom. Get lost. 14. Chloe's face was pale, but she quickly crawled back, grabbing onto my leg and sobbing. Liam, please, for Leo's sake, just forgive me this one time. I swear, nothing ever happened between me and Julian. I'll cut him out of my life completely, I promise. I kick her away. You have a nerve to bring up our son? I roared. Do you think you're worthy of even saying his name? Have you forgotten how you treated him? I knelt, patting her cheek lightly with a hand devoid of any warmth. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we're meeting at the courthouse to sign the papers. Cross Industries is done with the Morgan family. Don't even think about changing that, but I will make sure they don't actively try to destroy you further. This is the only chance you get. I suggest you take it. Without another glance at her, I stood up and walked away. Arthur Cross, holding Leo, followed me out, his entourage trailing behind us. The next day, Chloe stood outside the courthouse, begging me. She was crying hysterically, like a child. Honey, I know I was wrong. I've cut Julian off completely. I'll never do it again. Honey, I don't want a divorce. Please don't do this. The irony was laughable. We had been married for 4 years, and this was the first time she had ever called me honey. I felt no happiness, only a profound, chilling disgust. No matter how much she pleaded, I went through with the divorce. I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Although my family didn't actively pursue the Morgans, the family had made too many enemies over the years. Everyone knew they were finished. Within 6 months, Morgan Industries declared bankruptcy, buried in debt. Later, I heard through the grapevine what happened. Old Man Morgan had Julian and his son sent to settle a debt with some very unpleasant people south of the border. Their organs were reportedly sold off around the world. After the bankruptcy, the Morgans' shady business practices came to light. The core members of the family all went to prison. Even Chloe was sentenced to 10 years for money laundering. And the Vance family, thanks to my father's machinations, quickly faded into obscurity. A year later, I began the process of taking over my family's vast commercial empire.